Good morning, everyone. Welcome you all to the third PIER Economic Seminar already in this year. And today we gather to delve into a topic of increasing relevance and urgency, like on the economic nature of climate change in the ASEAN+3 region, more mixed than thought, which is very related to economics of climate change, the topic of urgency right now. And it is an honor to introduce our esteemed presenter, Dr. Seong Kim, a luminary in the field of environmental finance. And currently he serves as a research professor at the Graduate School of Environmental Finance, Yonsei University. Prior to that, he was an assistant professor of economics at Yonsei University, Korea as well, and a teaching fellow of economics at the University of St. Andrews in the UK. He earned his PhD in economics from Birkbeck College, London in 2013. And his research has focused on the role of misperceptions and mispricing in shaping business cycles and currency market anomalies. And related papers have been published in various journals, such as the Journal of Political Economy. His current interests extend to the economics of climate change, and related works were recently presented and discussed at the World Bank and the University of Tokyo, and right now at the Bank of Thailand. Without further ado, please join me in warmly welcoming Dr. Seong Hoon Kim and his research team. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for having me here. And I'm truly honored to be here at the Bank of England. And today I'm going to talk about the economic nature of climate change for the ASEAN+3 region. But before we move on to there, let me briefly mention that this work is a part of the research project and financially supported by the ASEAN+3 Macroeconomic Research Office, shortened the AMRO, and then the usual disclaimer applies. The research project actually conducted jointly by the three colleagues of mine, and they all participate today. And the usual disclaimer is that the requested by AMRO is the views expressed in this research outputs are those of the contracted researchers. They do not necessarily represent the views of AMRO, its board, or its in-house research. And to start, there are two strands of the literature on the macroeconomic impacts of climate change. One is focused on the real activity and the GDP level and the GDP deviation from the potential output or the GDP growth rate. And the other one is focused on the inflation impacts of climate change on the price level. And a bunch of the literature since the Nordhaus 1992 have assumed that the climate change have a negative impact on the real activity. And this idea actually formulated as a damage function, as a share of the GDP. Then this assumption, from the theoretical work, have supported by the many empirical studies. And I tagged this table from the Richard Toll's the 2018 paper, and then as you see here, and if you focused on this part and here, and then almost all empirical studies and simulation studies shows that the climate change have a negative impact on the GDP, except the one paper is the Richard Toll's his own paper in 2002, and in this paper he presented and proposed the another form of the integrated assessment model, which is called the fund. And so except this one paper, all the simulation and empirical studies shows that the climate change is a bad source for the economy. And the further studies shows that this negative impact are more pronounced for developing countries, particularly those with the high income inequality. And the other strand of the paper, which focuses on the inflation, also shows that the hot temperature, the high temperature has raised the price level or the inflation rate in the near term, but somewhat dampen in the medium term or in the long run. So the impact on the inflation is a little more mixed than the impact on the real activity. And another recent paper from the IMF shows that droughts and floods has a positive impact on the inflation rate. And droughts tend to raise the inflation rate, but flooding tend to lower the inflation rate. Right. So just to brief these two, a bunch of the literature, we are quite sure the many impact studies, existing studies shows that we are quite sure about the negative impact on the real activity, but quite mixed about the inflation. And I'd like to mention two more recent studies which focused on the single country level. And the one is studied by the Kim. This is not Kim. This is not me. Okay, another Kim, yeah, who is affiliated the Illinois, Illinois University. And these research team found that the climate change have the negative impact in the industrial growth. So they actually used the monthly data. So they used the industrial production growth rate, and while raising the inflation and unemployment. So it means that the contractionary and inflationary climate change. Okay, and they use that as a measure of climate change. They use that the actuaries climate index, which was developed by the North American Actuaries Association. Okay, I'll mention later a little more about that. And then they employ the smooth transition vector autoregulation model to capture the impact of the climate index ACI on the unemployment, inflation, and the IP growth rate. So, and the second one I'd like to mention which was the paper by the Zerofat and the 2022, and then I presume that all of you have already attended some seminar or about the research talk about this paper, and they started about Thailand and found that overall climate change has contractionary impact on output growth, but somewhat muted on inflation side. But this study is really thorough and comprehensive. They also look at some asymmetry and the non-linearities, okay, between the conditions of the weather. And when they studied, the Thailand, they used the SPEI, Standardized Precipitation Evaporation Index, a quite long name, but let me just show the SPEI. And they look at some asymmetry between the SPEI and positive SPEI. The negative SPEI is the wet condition or flooding or precipitation, and the negative, the SPEI is the drought or the dry condition. Okay, and then they find there is some asymmetry between the wet and dry conditions. This means that the impact on the output and inflation largely depend on the types of weather events. Okay, and they also studied some of the provincial level, and then also they find that the large variations across the different provinces within the Thailand. Okay. And let me step a little deeper about their study. And in the Thailand, and I tabulate, we tabulate. This is not from the Zerofat, but I tabulated the Zerofat's the key results on here, and by focusing on the types of the weather. Okay, so the wet condition and dry condition can have the impacts on the output growth and the price inflation. Okay, on here, and then they look at the production side and the price side. Okay, so and again they divided the sectoral difference. They compared that and on production side. So agricultural sector, okay, they tend to increase their output under the wet condition. Okay, but the output tends decreasing in the drought condition. Okay, and on the interestingly, if you look at the industrial sector, the wet condition tend to lower. So this is actually opposite the impact to the agriculture. Okay, and while the drought or dry conditions raised industrial output. And again, if you move on to the service sector, okay, the sign again reversed now. So the wet conditions tend to raise the output of the service sector, but lower the dry conditions. Then again, if you go to a little deeper level, okay, a little disaggregated level, and then the mining and construction belongs to the industrial, and the accommodation and transportation belongs to the service sector. And then if you look at the sign of its impact on the output growth, you can see that on the wet conditions, mining and construction shows the negative. Okay, and while under drought conditions, mining and construction tend to raise their output. And if you aggregate these two, and then you can find that why the industrial sector has negative signs here, it is quite consistent, right? And if you now look at the disaggregated service sector, accommodation and transportation, you find again under wet conditions, the accommodation and transportation service tend to more popular, okay, while they decrease under the drought conditions. And again, if you aggregate them, to see that the service sector response, and you see that their sign is quite consistent. It's like that. Now let me move on to the price side. Okay, they look at the core. Core is actually excluding the food and energy price change, right? So you can roughly divide by the CPI as the core CPI and food and energy one, right? So they find that on the wet and both on the wet and dry conditions, the core CPI tends to rise. So under both conditions, inflation, is likely to occur like that. And then if you look at so this index actually exclude the food and energy. So if you disaggregate the food and energy again, and then you find that the food side again, under both conditions, inflationary, and energy price also tends to increase on the wet condition but decrease in the dry conditions. Okay. So as you see here, okay, the impact of climate change measured in terms of the SPEI tend to have some mixed effect at the sector level, but quite pronounced in the inflation side. Okay, and so now, so to summarize, okay, the existing literature, including the study about Thailand, is that the economic impacts of climate change is quite contractionary, but mildly inflationary. Okay, and however, these impacts vary much with weather types and industrial structure and income levels. So our question is that through which mechanism does climate change lead to such impacts, which vary much with the weather types, industrial structure, and income levels? So let me suggest to you, okay, imagine a country that consists of dominantly, okay, for example, service sector. Okay, assuming that the case for Thailand, the service sector, okay, discovered by the Zero Fort et al. In 2022, can be generalized. Okay, so just imagine we are living in a country, okay, which is dominantly by the 80% of the service sector. Okay, and this is quite sensible because many advanced economies are quite dominantly by the service sector. So right, then have a look at this table again. Okay, so when they studied the impact of climate change on the price level, actually they didn't match with the production side and this one, but as we know that the core CPI tend to rise, okay, in response to the hard, wet and dry conditions, we can infer, okay. And then if you live in a country which is dominantly by the service sector, we can infer that the service sector's price, okay, will also tend to rise. Is right? Right. So if you combine that under wet conditions, this country will show that some positive movement on output side, but quite muted on. But on the dry condition, they are quite muted. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Okay, it's really complicated. Okay, so you live in a country which is dominantly by the service sector, and under wet conditions, you find that the expansionary output and inflationary, right? But when the country hit by some hard dry conditions, you see that the country will find that the negative output movement, but again inflation, right? Let's do some undergraduate experiments now, okay? Having in mind that, okay? So I take this table from the Azumoglu's 2015 very popular text, yeah, for the first year, economics students, undergraduate students, and based on our previous study on this sector from the Thailand, and what we know is that in order to generate this sign, on the expansionary output and inflationary output under wet conditions, and the contractionary output and inflationary the price on the dry condition. What kind of combination we need? The supply and the demand. Okay, so this they show that the four rows of the possible experiments for the undergraduate students. Okay, and here we can if you find some equilibrium phenomenon, if you observe that this kind of that, then you can infer, to see the economic nature of wet conditions, economic nature of the right conditions, in terms of the fall in supply or rise in supply, or the fall or rise in the demand side. Okay, so you have four possibility. Okay, rise and fall in supply side, and the rise and fall in the demand side. Four possibility, and then the relative strength of demand and supply movement can also affect the equilibrium, the outcome, right? Equilibrium outcome. So there are three more possibilities. Okay, the one is that demand movement and supply movement they equal at the absolute value. Okay, on the other side, the large supply movement relative to demand, or large demand movement relative to supply. Okay, three more possibilities. So actually, you have 12. Okay, as you see here, 12 like that. Okay. Then again, think about this one. So what kind of the combination, to generate the expansionary and the inflationary, the equilibrium phenomenon under the hard wet conditions? What kind of combination you need? This is actually undergraduate exercise, which you may find from your exam. So to see, expansionary outcome, expansionary output movements, and the inflationary price level, you need large positive movement of the demand, right? So these two possibilities, actually implies the economic nature of the wet conditions, generated by large movement from demand. And how about this one? In order to see equilibrium outcome, at which contractionary output movement and inflationary the price, what kind of a combination you need? Again, exercise. What do you find? This one, right? So if you see that, this one, you see that contractionary output movement and inflationary price level. And another case is this one. Again, you see that like that. The common feature between these two diagrams, the yellow boxed diagram, is that you need large negative movement on supply side to generate the equilibrium outcome on the drought condition for the service sector. So if you well finished this undergraduate exercise, let's move on to the second year undergraduate. Okay, before moving there, just to summarize. Okay, undergraduate exercise shows that, well, large positive movement in demand is a necessary condition for heavy rainfall to have expansionary and inflationary effects. Okay, and a large negative movement in supply is a necessary condition for drought to have contractionary and inflationary effects, like that. Okay, so you can generalize. You can interrupt me anytime if my explanation, my wordings are quite unclear to you. Okay, just interrupt me at any time. Okay? And so, okay, you are now the second year textbook. I take the Blanchard, the 2013, the macroeconomic textbook. So you are now in the second year. Then by showing this aggregate supply and aggregate demand, I now generalize our previous experiments, okay, at the aggregate level, at the macro level. Okay. So I presume that you know what is behind the AS curve. So labor setting and price setting conditions here, and so the factor market, and what is behind the aggregate demand. Okay, as you learned from your second year economics study, and the ISLM. Okay, if you are still the New Keynesian. Okay, so now, so for this emergent country, the real challenges are that as climate, that if the climate change takes the form of both extended period of drought and the increased frequency of heavy rainfall, the economic impacts would turn out little on output growth and much on price inflation. Is that clear? Is right? So for this emergent country, okay, which is dominantly populated by the service sector, right? So if you look at again, and if you assume that the case for Thailand, it can be generalized that, and you see that more frequent heavy rainfall, extended period of drought, okay, can generate, okay, on the opposite is muted, okay, cancel out each other because they are different sign. If you look at the earlier GDP like that movement and earlier price level is right, okay, and on price side they are very inflationary. Okay, more frequent the heavy rainfall will generate inflation, and extended period of drought and also generate the inflation as well. Right. So the scientists usually believe that climate change is not about the one particular type of weather anomalies. Okay, the actual climate change will come to us, okay, in the form of more hard drought and more hard rainfall kind of thing, right? Yeah. So under the climate change, we can expect, if the Thailand case is correct one and can be generalized globally, then we will see that climate change have little impact on upside and much more impact on the price inflation. But this one is hard to reconcile. The overall consensus I presented on the first page of my slide. But do you remember that? The existing studies show that the climate change leads to very pronounced output reduction, okay, but quite muted on the inflation side. Do you remember that? Except the Richard Toll's 2002 paper. Yes. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay. Actually, sorry for my voice. Like, in your first few slides when you presented the table by toll.
Yeah.
That one, you show only the impact of the increase in temperature, right?
Yeah. Basically, you're right. Yeah.
But when you mentioned about climate change later on, like it seems like the paper by Zero Pad was focusing only on the extreme weather events, like whether it's like dry or wet condition, right?
Yes.
So my question would be like, in order for us to infer whether like the impact of climate change has like contractionary or muted or expansionary impact on output, wouldn't it be necessary that we take into account like both the slow onset event, like the increase in temperature, together with like the extreme event? Because otherwise it would be when we compare the results across different paper, then we cannot like conclude for sure whether it's going to have contractionary impact or not. So what is your thought on this?
Excellent point. That is why we are here and then to present our results, our research result about that. And then, yeah, you are right. So in many previous empirical papers focused on the global warming, okay, measured in terms of the temperature change, right? And then as time passes, the scientists found that the global warming comes to us in many different forms of weather types, right? Right. So as you mentioned that unless we study the impact of water factor, precipitation and drought, and also temperature factor, heat stress and cold stress, we cannot definitely say about the economic impact of climate change. Okay. And so we like to move on to this one. Actually, you mentioned why we need to look at the hot weather and cold weather, including. So I simply mentioned, so far, when I talk about the case for Thailand, I focused on the water factor, right? So, but you also need to consider about the temperature factor as well, because the climate change come into heat stress, cold stress, and the drought and precipitation, as well as rise in the sea level. Because sometimes it makes more strong typhoon, okay? The tropical cyclone like that. So you have to look at the economic impact of all these types of different weather events. And then, so we are now well motivated by your question, okay? Why we have to study, okay? It's different types of the weather. And then before we move on to our result, okay? A little more talk about that. And again, I like to emphasize the temperature factor also have made quite mixed effect. So they can affect the economy through the supply side and demand side as well. So for example, the hot weather may make the people idle, which means some negative on the labor supply side, right? But at the same time, they make more time, they enforce us to spend more time on the beach, which means hot weather sometimes come into as a form of positive demand effect, right? Especially for some developed countries, it's correct. So in the long run, if you're well adapted to climate change, okay, they will eventually lead to some structural change in the industrial composition, right? So even in the short run, okay, we cannot definitely say that the weather, the heat stress can dominantly negative on output or dominantly positive on output, because they along the output side, okay, these can cancel off each other. Okay, you got it? Okay. And the cold weather also may cause that some disruption of construction sites. So on supply side, it have negative impact on output, but it may attract some countries the foreign tourists. They like Spain, the south part of Spain, Sierra Nevada, and then in Switzerland. Yeah, they can actually attract more the foreign tourists when they have the severe winter. Actually, the ski resort kind of thing, right? Or the cold weather can simply redirect demand for indoor amusement side to the outdoor ski resort. So in this case, this is neutral on the domestic demand like that. So what I like to point out, okay, on this slide is that first, in order to study economic impacts of climate change, we have to look at all different types of weather events. Okay, first, and the second, each weather type, extreme weather event, can influence the economy in demand and supply side at the same time. So the equilibrium outcome, okay, will depend on which one, okay, which force is stronger, okay, and which force is positive or negative, right, like that. So climate change is a complex and multidimensional phenomenon. So not only from the scientific views, but also from the economic perspective. So this is urgent to study this complicated nature. So,
Excuse me.
yes,
Just to clarify,
Yeah.
Jiropat et al. 2022 studies the climate shocks,
Mhm.
but your paper is going to study the climate change. Is that right?
yeah,
Okay, so it's like the comprehensive climate change effect.
yes, in a sense,
Okay.
comprehensive, more comprehensive.
We will talk about that on our
Yes,
on
in
one
the-
meeting. Okay.
So yeah, today we studied the economic nature of the events for the ASEAN+3 region and individual members by disentangling the impact through the supply side and demand side channels. And the understanding to motivate some policymakers, you may participate here, understanding economic nature of weather events will help to better inform policymakers when utilizing traditional macro policies in response to the extreme weather events, and also gauge and build up our adaptation capacity while managing instant impact of extreme weather events. Okay. To this end, we followed 4 steps. First, we construct the index, okay, for extreme weather events for each time for each country, okay, and then we also constructed some composite index which covers all types of weather events, okay. And in the second step, we identify the supply and demand shocks within a small open economy, the vector auto-regulation framework. And then we decompose the historical series for the aggregate supply shock and aggregate demand shock, okay, for each member country of ASEAN+3. And we proceed to the regression analysis on the panel and as well as the individual level. Okay. So we actually benchmark the actuaries climate index, as I mentioned earlier, okay, and to construct the weather index and climate index. And this ACI developed by the North American Association of Insurance Companies, along the American Academy of Actuaries, Canadian, and the Society of Actuaries. Okay, and this index, okay, covers the 6 different categories of weather events. So high temperature, low temperature, heavy precipitation, and severe drought, and strong wind, and sea level. Then they average it to construct the composite index. Okay, and then when you look at the extreme weather events for 6 different categories of weather events, the extremity, the idea of extremity is captured by the tails of weather distribution, okay, and defined relative to the reference period, 1961 to 1990. And that empirical weather distribution for each category of time, each category of extreme events is constructed at the monthly frequency from the daily data, okay, by collecting the temperature and precipitation and wind speed, etc. Okay. So they have 6 individual weather indices, okay, and then by averaging them, they construct one composite index, which is called ACI. Okay, they apply this methodology for indexing to Canada and the United States. Okay, and we benchmark. And we apply the same methodology to each member state of the ASEAN+3 region. Okay, and then we collect the daily weather data from the NASA Power since 1981. And when we collect weather data, we focused on the capital city of each country, and then on the coordinate of latitude and longitude. Okay, we move on to the by half degree, and then we collect 16 points around the capital city of each country. Okay, then when you doing that, we actually exclude the sea level. Okay, they actually include the sea level, but we actually exclude the sea level for some practical reasons, and also based on our previous studies of the impact of the sea level, at the moment. So we have actually 5 individual weather indices. Okay, plus by averaging them, we have one composite climate index. And the difference is that because the data for ASEAN+ the economies are available from NASA Power since 1981, okay, at the daily level since 1981, we use the reference period is the 1981 to 2010. Okay, so this is difference from the benchmarked one. And then we call that it is AECI, ASEAN Extreme Climate Index. A few example series include the Thailand and you and Korea and us. So actually we constructed 14 member states for of ASEAN, 13 plus Hong Kong. Hong Kong contribute to the management of AMLO, so we have to include that Hong Kong as well. Yeah. But here I simply present that the Thailand and Hong Kong and additional 2 countries, large countries, Indonesia and Vietnam. Okay, and as you see here, there is some slight mild upward trend in the heat stress in Thailand and mild downward trend in the cold stress, right? So it matches to the idea of global warming. And then precipitation tends to little rise, and wind speed is almost the same, and drought is, I don't know, like that. And if you are better know than us about the 2011 great flooding in Thailand, and if you try to match your experience, your casual experience on this index, you may fall into conundrum kind of thing. Okay, so if you look at in the 2011 like that, so the precipitation is on the quite usual level. Okay, so it doesn't reflect the 2011 great flooding in Thailand. On the other hand, if you look at around 2016, you have large rainfall around the capital city, Bangkok. Okay, but we are not quite sure about that, why the index does not capture about the great flooding in 2011, possibly because we focused on the capital city and the daily basis, but the great flooding may start with the upside, a little north side of Thailand, maybe. So you may fill in this gap later. So anyway, we constructed the precipitation in this way.
Professor, so just to clarify, for the drought, this one, how do you compute this drought index? Normally, drought.
Oh, right. Yeah. So,
and also similarly for heat stress and things like that.
So precipitation focused on the amount of the rainfall, daily rainfall. But on the other hand, when you construct a drought, it focuses on the number of the days which we have no rainfall.
So it's the duration of the
duration, yes. Which one is focused on the duration, which one is focused on the amount. Yeah.
So this these indices are computed based on the amount of rainfall. Am I right?
Basically. And then we are all a team of 4 clickers. And then can I just transfer the answer to this one to Professor Han? Yeah.
In this case, the drought is measured by the SPI, as mentioned Professor Kim, and SPI measured all wet extreme and the dry extreme. But in this case, we only consider the negative SPI, and we take the absolute value of the SPI. That is in our study, the drought measure.
Different one, CEI and the AECI, right? And CEI actually comes from the SPEI. But
So okay, so only drought come from SPEI, not others.
Drought, yes, others from the I'm sorry about that. We actually tried to the index different from the AECI, and then there is some confusion in my head. I'm so sorry about that. And then his explanation is correct. Actually, regarding to the drought, actually we just borrow from the negative SPEI. Sorry about that. And if you look at the Korea, and then you have more pronounced the upward trend in heat stress and the downward trend and the cold stress and so on. So to manage the time properly, We have 40 minutes. Yeah, we have more. Yeah, it's fine. Yeah. Okay. So and then well, if you look at the wind speed, this is almost constant. So as time passes, the Korea isn't likely to hit by, until now, yeah, hit by the high, I mean, the strong typhoon kind of thing. But the global warming phenomenon is much more pronounced than the Thailand, yeah, in Korea. Then anyway, yeah, again, we borrowed from the negative SPEI for Korea, and then we construct the climate index, yeah, as you see here. And this is Indonesia. It's more pronounced heat stress and more pronounced in cold stress. And drought, yeah, there is some non-linear movement. And precipitation is tends to recently since the 2000, yeah, slightly. And the wind speed is rather the fall since the 2000. And then by making the averaging average for these different 5 types of weather events, and we construct the composite index and this one. And this is for Vietnam, okay? And the one notable feature is this one. They suffered a lot with drought in the early 80s, yeah. But Vietnam has more rainfall, yeah, more water, and the late 2000 like that. And also the wind speed shows some interesting feature on here. So among these 4 countries, Vietnam is the most notable country, which shows very non-linear movement along these weather events like that. Home-shaped, home-shaped, and home-shaped. Yeah. And so they have climate index, which quite home-shaped climate index like that, early the 90s. Then this is our first step, okay, to construct the index. And our second step is we like to identify, okay, the supply side shock and the demand side shock, okay. And you employs a 3-variable structural vector regression model with exogenous variable. We take the 2 legs for the endogenous variable and 1 leg for exogenous variable. So the endogenous variable consists of 3, okay, real GDP growth and the CPI inflation and interest rates. I use the interest rate for the prime retail bank's deposit rate because we want to use that so just imagine you need to study 14 different countries, including Laos and Cambodia and so on. Okay, sometimes the policy rate and the short-term interest rate are not available at all, yeah, for some countries. So, but they have, all these countries have prime banks deposit rate, okay? So I use that for the interest rate, I use the deposit rates, okay? And this one, yeah. And employs for exogenous variable, the US GDP growth rate and international commodity inflation. And commodity includes the agriculture, so crops, and the energy and metal. Okay, so this is a composite price inflation for the international commodity market. And then the GDP data comes at the quarterly frequency. Okay, this study is based on the quarterly frequency data. And then we also include the constant and trend. Then we identify the supply and demand shock, okay, based on the fundamental economic theory. Okay. So according to the AS, so do you remember that the second year, the macroeconomic textbook, written by the Blanchard, AS and AD curve? Do you remember that? Okay. According to this, fundamental economic theory, okay, positive supply shock, okay, at equilibrium causes fast GDP growth and lower inflation rate, right? And positive demand shock at equilibrium causes fast GDP growth and higher inflation. Okay? But sometimes demand shock is generated by the central bank. Okay, so we like to insulate, okay, the pure demand shock from the monetary shock. Okay, so we include that the interest rate. So positive demand shock. So when you construct the aggregate demand from the fundamental the macroeconomic theory, okay, the ISNLM behind that, right? So positive demand shock, okay, generate on the ISN side, generated the higher interest rate. On the other hand, expansionary monetary shock, okay, at equilibrium causes faster GDP growth rate as in the demand shock and high inflation rate as in the aggregate demand shock. But on the interest rate side, expansionary monetary policy lower the interest rate. Is it right? So we can isolate, okay, the demand shock, okay, from the monetary shock. Then, yeah. So the first column shows the impact of the response of real GDP growth, inflation, and interest to the supply side shock. And the middle column shows that their response to the impulse of the demand. Okay, and the last one shows that the responses of the key macro variables to the monetary shock. Okay, the one notable feature from Thailand is that I think this one. Okay, because I'm not quite sure that the confidence band is 68%. Okay, following the convention of the sign restriction method. Okay, and I'm not quite sure why the response of interest rate to the Thai monetary authority policy shows large bands with large uncertainty, which means that the retail banks, prime retail banks in Thailand, do not reflect quickly or very much to the Bank of Thailand's policy stance. So I'm not quite sure about that. Yeah. And in Korea, you see that again, we repeated the same exercise, and you see that the monetary policy have some quite, this one interest rate. Right, this one is. So the impact of monetary policy on the growth rate shows a typical movement of a hum-shaped response over the output. Yes.
Yeah. Quick questions. Like, do central banks in your sample have independent monetary policy? I mean, all central banks have it. Any of them have a fixed exchange rate regime, for example?
Actually, we don't include that the FX rate in this empirical framework.
Sorry,
we don't include exchange rate. In this framework, but
So my point is that you try to identify the monetary policy shocks as well. So so the country needs to have the independent monetary policy, I guess, in order to
that's a really good point.
That's why I'm asking.
Right. Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, perhaps we can include that there's some kind of right. So in order to claim that this is the small open economy empirical framework, I think we need to reflect the kind of regime, forex regime, exchange regime as well, and the movement of interest rate may depend on the exchange rate regime as well. So that's fine. We'll think about it. Right. So let's move on to because this is not the ultimate object, and then we just check that whether our empirical framework is reasonably sensible or not. And so this is one for Indonesia, and then the notable feature is this quite large oscillation, which means, well, we applied the leg 2 for endogenous variable to all countries, all 14 countries, but for Indonesia, perhaps we need to reduce the number of the leg for the Indonesia, because they shows that the large oscillation. And for Vietnam, you see that is quite sensible one. And interestingly, in Korea, there is some bounce around here, but for other countries, Indonesia and even for Vietnam, they did not expand much. And they stay below the trend, like that. So anyway, then once we identify the shock, then we construct the historical series for the aggregate supply and aggregate demand shock. And this is again for Thailand. Okay, and the blue one shows that the aggregate supply shock, and that the gray one is the aggregate demand shock. And Again, if you want to map your causal experience onto these identified shock areas, then you may see that this one is the 1998 Q1, okay, this blue one, okay, and this gray one is the 1998 Q3. So this indicates that the currency crisis for East Asia in 1997 to 98, okay, can be described as the negative supply shock first, followed by the large negative demand shock, at least for the Thailand. Okay, and they have large impacts, right? Like that, almost 5%, minus 5%, minus 4%, or like that. And now, if you are concerned about the pandemic period like that, and this period, right? So they show that the negative demand and negative supply shock for the 2020, okay? Afterward, there is some positive supply and negative demand for the 2021, like that. So you can understand the economic nature of the COVID-19, okay, as in this way. But you may find that this is quite small, but that is illusion, because it looks small because the East Asia currency crisis is so big, okay, like that. So, but anyway, the pandemic for each quarter, make the negative, the negative impact up to 1% or 1.5% point like this. And you see again the Korea, okay. So East Asia. Korea again, hit by the currency crisis in the 1997 and the 98, and then they mainly described by the aggregate supply shock like that, and followed by aggregate demand, but the size is much more smaller and so on. And the pandemic, the Korea economy quite overcome well, except the first quarter of 2020, like this, And here for Indonesia, they usually translate the pandemic as aggregate demand shock. Okay, and they usually translate currency crisis as the aggregate supply shock, followed by again aggregate demand shock. And this is for Vietnam for the pandemic. So just for the time management and so do you have any questions up to now? We are now our main part of the results. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, 98. Yeah. Let me first talk about the pandemic period, or this one. Since the pandemic, there are a bunch of the growing number of the literature about the economic nature of the pandemic. Okay, but the one consensus is that the pandemic is featured by the mixed of the aggregate supply and aggregate demand. In both sides. Then what I find is that still there is some variations across countries. In some countries, the pandemic affect economy more through the aggregate demand channel, but for other countries, more on the aggregate supply channel like that. Also, it depends on the timing of time of the pandemic as well. So I'm not sure the results is quite sensible or not for the pandemic period, but the literature is also it's far reach from the one single conclusion. So and what do you feel about that the current crisis?
so actually there has to be the contributions coming from the monetary policy shocks as well. Is that right?
Yeah, sure. Okay. But I haven't presented it here. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it now sounds like a bit weird for me. Like it's like during the pandemic periods, the GDP falls by 12%. So like a significant part of the of the GDP drops. So must come from the monetary policy
some
shocks.
Recovery, made by the monetary shock, but because we use this empirical framework, the monetary shock comes to on the output only with the lag. As you see here, this is a structural shock. This is a vector, 3 variable vector, supply demand and monetary, the absolute. And then if respond to the some shift on the output and inflation, if the central bank move after observe on this one, then this some kind of unexpected monetary policy come to this one and then affect the today, and then it accumulated the next period and again accumulated next period like that. Yeah. So here. So for example, here, actually we focused on the pure demand shock, okay, insulated from the monetary one. But of course, if you look at the time series for the real GDP, okay, then they will include that all impact, demand, supply, and positive or effective monetary policy kind of thing. Yeah. Right. So we collect the aggregate supply and aggregate demand shock, okay, from the previous the empirical framework, and then we bring them to the panel analysis. Actually, we do the one pooling analysis and the panel analysis with the country fixed effects. Okay, the panel with the country fixed effect is specified with this YT is either the supply shock or demand shock. Okay, and XT is either drawn from the 5 individual indices, each of 5 individual indices, or collectively. And then we also look at the impact of the composite index, okay, which is average, which is obtained as the average of the 5 individual indices, like that. And then do you remember that the climate and weather index, okay, is constructed at the monthly frequency, but we identify the shock, okay, at the quarterly frequency. So we average the index, okay, to make the quarterly the index. Then here is the results from the pooling the regression. And the column 1 to 3, okay, is the result, okay, for the aggregate supply shock, and the 4, 5, 6 is for the aggregate demand. So this is dependent variable right over there. So I need to put that the vertical line here. Yeah. So anyway, and the first column, okay, shows that the how much the stress can explain, okay, have impact on the aggregate supply shock. Okay. So you know that from our empirical framework, VAR framework, okay, aggregate supply and aggregate demand behave almost white noise, right? White noise process kind of thing. Yeah, the expected value of 1 with the standard deviation of the 0. Okay, then we wonder if these extreme climate events, okay, can explain the aggregate supply or aggregate demand. Then we can explain some white noise one, okay, by some degree, right? Then we are interested in how much degree, okay, extreme weather events can explain the white noise aggregate supply and aggregate demand shock. Okay. So the first column is for each of his stress on the AS. So and regression on the stress, and the second one is regression on the cold stress, and so on and so on. So I put that bar here, okay, bar here, and this one is I look at all collectively, all 5 indices at the same time, okay, and the last one, the third column shows that the composite index, okay, got it, okay. So as you see here, okay, the impacts of extreme weather events, okay, on the aggregate supply shock look quite negative, right? Look quite negative, right? Especially for heat stress and the heavy precipitation. Okay? It is confirmed at for the case of precipitation, it confirmed by individual and collectively. And for the case of heat stress, the significance is quite marginal. So I put that bold, okay, for the significance one. Okay, and then you found that for the collectively, when we analyze the impact of heat stress on the aggregate supply shock, collectively, you find that there is a significance like that, right? Okay, and although the other value, if you look at the wind and the cold stress and so on, you see that all signs is negative except the case of this one drought. Okay, when analyzed at the individual level. Okay. Individually like that. So from this one, well, you see that all the extreme weather events have a negative impact on output side, okay, aggregate supply side, okay, yeah, and especially strong for the heat stress and the precipitation, okay. Then we are interested in whether the composite index, which is obtained by averaging all these things, okay, and how representative, well, this single, the composite index can affect significantly and larger than all the other large one, right? So in terms of the size and in terms of significance, the composite index is quite representative. Okay. And if you look at the aggregate demand side, okay, these stress have a positive impact on demand along the demand channel, okay, but the other one has none of the others have some statistical significance, okay, sometimes positive and sometimes negative. But if you focused on the composite part, and again, it gains statistical significance and some meaningful size, right, as well. Yeah. So from this our pooling analysis, okay, we can make some interim conclusion, okay, interim findings. So extreme weather events look like a negative supply shock, okay, especially for heat stress and the heavy precipitation. And the composite index is a good representative, right? And extreme weather events work like on the other channel, on demand channel, has positive impact, right? Positive demand shock, especially for the heat stress. And again, the composite index looks a good representative as well. Right. So this is our first the conclusion about the economic nature of the extreme weather events and the climate index. So together from the AS and the channels, heat stress is mostly inflationary, okay, but precipitation is quite contractionary. Why? Here is the negative supply shock. Okay. Yeah, but if you look at its impact on the demand side is the statistically insignificant or mildly negative in terms of sign, right? So the precipitation is mostly contractionary, and heat stress is mostly inflationary. If you focused on the composite index, you see that this is mildly contractionary and strongly inflationary. Why? If you look at this one, you see that the composite index shows the positive and negative supply shock and positive aggregate demand shock. But in terms of the size, it is a little more dominated and more significant in terms of substitution, right? So you can conclude that they move the composite climate index makes the economy moves. Okay, along the supply side is negative, along the demand side is positive, and on the upper side is they cancel out. Okay, while pushing the pace of price level. So they are mildly contractionary and strongly inflationary. But these results from the pooling over 14 different countries. So if we take into account the unobservable country-specific characteristics, so we move on to the panel analysis, and then you can confirm the overall. Have a look at look on this. So again, the heat stress and precipitation is the most pronounced the weather events, okay, and they have the negative impact on supply side, and the heat stress is most the pronounced the weather event along the demand side as well. Okay, they have mostly they have a positive impact, and in terms of again the composite index, they have negative and significant the impact on supply side and positive impact on the demand side. So again, in terms of the composite index, you see that the climate change may have some mildly contractionary and strongly inflationary. That is our interim conclusion of the economic nature. So because the each weather event and the climate change can affect the economy through both the aggregate supply and aggregate demand channels at the same time, okay, let me emphasize that the climate change will create cost push on supply side and demand pull inflation on the demand on the other side, okay, leading to higher rate of inflation while lowering the economic growth rate to some mild extent. But different countries may differently respond to the same types of the weather events. So we move on to the individual country analysis, okay? And I'm not presenting all the 14 countries, and I again focused on Thailand and Korea and Indonesia and Vietnam. And now again, the results from the individual regression, you see that, well, for Thailand, okay, drought and precipitation is more important factor. So it kind of makes sense. You started, actually focused on the water factor rather than temperature factor when you studied Thailand, okay? And then again, we found that Thailand is more susceptible, to change in the water amount rather than the temperature. And in terms of the aggregate supply and aggregate demand, well, Thailand experienced more pronounced. So so this water factor affected the Thai economy the more strongly through the aggregate demand side, okay, aggregate demand channel, statistically more significant, and in terms of also size, is larger than the aggregate supply side one, okay. And again, if you look at the composite index, you see that, well, the positive, the aggregate demand and larger than the panel result, and the negative aggregate supply, although it's not statistically significant, okay. So, and this is for Thailand. And this is for Korea. If you look at Korea, again, the Korea is more likely to be affected along the demand channel. But this time, sorry about that. But this time, Korea is more affected by the temperature factor rather than water factor, okay? So the heat stress and cold stress have both have the positive impact along the aggregate demand side, okay? And they have, again, the drought and precipitation positive impact on the economy, but they are not statistically significant. And if you, again, but anyway, for Korea, each types of weather events have positive impact individually and collectively, except the wind. This one, this really small one. And in terms of the composite index, well, it shows quite large impact through the aggregate demand one. And on the other hand, the AS side is negative, but statistically not very much significant. But sign is quite consistent with the panel results, right? Now have a look at the Indonesia. Well, they have again positive impact on demand through and the negative impact on supply, especially for the heat stress. And also the temperature factor is more important than the water factor, right? Interestingly. Yeah. And in terms of the composite one, you see that, well, they have large negative impact on supply side and positive impact on the demand side, but is quite marginal. It's not very much significant statistically. And now if you look at the Vietnam, they have only 46 observations here. Perhaps I think the sample size is a matter of the result for the Vietnam. All these weather events show no significance, insignificance, But in terms of the sign, you see that the positive almostly, except the drought, but here's again some negative one. It's a mixture of positive or negative. One notable thing is that I think the drought for Vietnam. But anyway, you have to keep in mind some limitation on the size of the sample, okay, for Vietnam, because we can collect the reliable economic data for Vietnam since the 2000 like that. So anyway, if you look at the design, the drought have quite large, almost 2% in terms of size, although they are not statistically significant. And the sign is actually some kind of the opposite. So collecting our results from the panel and individual analysis, let me quickly summarize our results. So we study economic nature of climate change for ASEAN+3 economy. And most types of extreme weather events look like adverse supply shock and favorable demand shock at the same time. At equilibrium, they will have a little impact on output, right? Because of that, because of this one. okay? But large impact on the inflation. When considering the size and statistical significance and heat stress and heavy precipitation, so one from the temperature factor and one from the water factor, okay, the two most primary types of extreme the weather events. And we can conclude that the composite index, okay, we benchmark from the North American, the AC Actuaries Climate Index, which is quite, remains, representative. Okay. And however, okay, I have to again emphasize the country difference, okay, country level difference. So the economic nature of extreme weather events are very much across countries, even within the ASEAN+3 region. In Thailand, you may remember, so let me just wrap up, okay? Let me just wrap up. So in Thailand, the two most primary types of weather shocks are drought and precipitation related to the water factor. And Indonesia and Korea, they are the heat and cold stress, which is related to temperature factor, are the two most primary types, okay, of weather events. And as for the composite climate index, the sign is shared across the country. So quite consistently, we found that the positive impact of the climate index, composite index, right, on the demand side, and negative impact on the supply side. Okay, but the significance and size is quite different. In Thailand and Korea, the aggregate demand effect is much more dominant. Okay, it is dominant than the aggregate supply effect. But Indonesia, you see that the aggregate supply effect is more dominant. So also Indonesia and Vietnam drought works like a large negative demand shock, which is quite different from our panel results, but they are statistically insignificant. Let me draw some implications from our study. To the extent that the climate change increases the frequency of extreme weather events and extends the duration of the extreme periods, the economy will experience more often cost-push inflation and demand-pull inflation at the same time. Without well-planned adaptation, if you are not well prepared, climate change may become a source of repeating structural change for our economy. In that, if you experience repeatedly cost-push inflation and demand-pull inflation at the same time, the flip curve will repeatedly shift output, right? And leading to the central bank's inflation targeting to get fragile. Furthermore, due to large variations across the countries, different countries, policymakers who are not well informed about their own country's economic nature of weather events will face further challenges when forming their traditional the macro policies. So this is the basic. So we have to study, policymakers and academia all together, the economic nature of the weather events to make better policy and better understand the impact of our future, climate change on our future. And finally, let me quote the Milton Friedman's wordings on the inflation. He says that almost half a century ago, the Milton Friedman said that the inflation is almost everywhere monetary phenomenon. But we may have to slightly change the wordings now. Perhaps the inflation have some structural component because of real phenomenon, okay, not fully monetary phenomenon because of the climate change. Thank you very much. And if you have further questions, and I'm happy to to discuss together. Yes.
Thank you. I just want to know the reason why this study and the former study excluded sea level in the methodology, because I think it's very related to the climate change.
Can I transfer to answer to you? To the questions. Why we exclude the sea level? For some practical reasons, and as well as the would you like this point, or because of this large research project, we have quite strict the labor division within the team. So I think he better
that's a very good question. Well, actually, in the previous study, we found that increase in every country. We found the increase very steady increasing the sea level of sea level. But and also we found that the movement of the sea level is very long, steady, the phenomena. But we in this study we focus on the shown beginning cycle. So the sea level, the movement of the sea level is not in this framework. There is not significant component. So we just in the kind of region we just exclude the component of the climate change of sea level. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, just to add, one more explanations. When you study the climate change, there are two approaches. One is we try to forecast the impact of climate change by looking at the cross-sectional difference across the countries. Okay, so some countries in the tropical region and other countries in the like Scandinavian countries in the North Pole region, kind of thing. Then we try to the impacts of climate change from the cross-sectional differences. And the other approach is that we look at the cyclical movement, so like the extreme weather events like that. Okay, although the climate change is a really trendy one, if you want to try to the impact of climate change, this trend impact on the economy, first we need to look at the cyclical component, some extreme one, okay, which is changed quarter by quarter and month by month like that. And because of that reason, when we studied previously, we focused on only 3 countries as our primary research step. We focused on the Thailand and Philippines and Korea, right? And then we found that the sea level has a little impact on the economic outcome. So actually we exclude that one. Yeah.
I understand that this is the project under the ASEAN+3 region, right?
Yes,
But I mean, 14 countries. Do you have any experience in excluding some countries that has no available data like Vietnam, because it's very limited, right? So if there's a test like that, will be the result be the same?
Yeah, the result is quite robust. Actually, I haven't excluded that for our quarterly level analysis. I mean, at the quarterly frequency, but I have a look at the same. I have looked at the same model, but actually using the monthly frequency data, monthly data. But at the time, we actually included only 8 countries out of 14 member states, because if you want to study, I mean, this one, in order to identify the supply and demand shock, you have to use that industrial production kind of thing, right? Monthly, I mean, the IP growth is available on the monthly rate. But out of 14 countries, only 8 countries provide the industrial production data. So we focused on only 8 countries, and then we studied that the same one with using some different legs. So in our monthly model, we applied 4 legs, leg 4 for endogenous variable and leg 3 for exogenous variable, and then we obtained that the quite similar results. Yeah, and anyway, thank you very much. The sample size is quite hard one. Yeah.
There's a question from the online participant, which mean I'm not sure if it's relevant or not. Okay, how do you incorporate a likely scenario in which climate change will become increasingly severe in the near future?
Well, our study part from the simulation study one, so we haven't explicitly included that the climate scenario.
It's okay.
Yeah. So,
project.
Actually, this is my personal comment, so don't take it if it's not relevant. From my opinion, I still perceive that your paper still tackle the climate shock rather than climate change. Because personally, the reason I say that was like in your almost the last slide, you mentioned yourself that climate change like imply the shift in the severity and the frequency of the extreme weather events, right? But the way you treat like the climate variables in your model or your analysis is mainly you treat it as a shock rather than like tackle it from the changing in the distribution or like changing in the frequency. So just my personal opinion that if you position your paper as like analysis of the climate shock on the economy, it might be more appropriate. Similar comments also apply for super paper. The second issue was like when people are trying to understand like the impact of climate change on climate shock on like economy, they might want to because like the transmission channel would be playing very major role, right? Whether it's go through like impact from agricultural sector or like construction or like, so in your analysis, are you planning to decompose and look at the impact by sub industry or at the like by economic sector level, or even in the industrial sector itself, like you plan to dig into greater details on like impact on different industry? Because my understanding would be like different industry would be exposed differently to the climate shock and to different type of shock as well. Yeah.
Thank you very much for your comments, and you gave us the road forward, for our research, and that's why I find this part paper and read 2 colleagues of him, and I find really thorough, up to the sector level and the mining and construction and so on, and energy. Even you look at the price impact on the price change, the raw vegetables and raw food and so on. So it's quite impressive. And then even when we study at the disaggregate level like that, we can have more definite, conclusion about the impact of economic, climate shock. Yes.
Is there any comments or questions? Okay. If none, what about the online participants? Okay, I think there's no question. So we would like to thank you for being here and presenting the interim findings from your paper, and we will have more discussion on this, and we hope that you will have a very good paper up later on. Thank you very much again.
Thank you very much.
Please give him a loud applause. Thank you.